listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to this webinar about Embase. My name is Anne-Marie and I'm your presenter today. I come from a biological background and I have been delivering Embase trainings for several years, working closely with the Embase product team and our customers like yourselves to understand how Embase provides a solution for many different workflows. And today I'd like to take you through the following agenda. Here we go. Sorry about that. Just a slight pause in moving the slides on. So I'd like to discuss some tools with you. So what can you use when training your end users or indeed when you're looking to train yourselves? Also demonstrating value with a case study. Guiding users through 3 steps. Initial investigation. So how can we show users how to start looking for terms, for example, to build the best search? Then moving on to setting up the search strategies, and then finally refining, editing and managing your search results. Now we will have time for questions throughout the session, but we will make some time for Q&A at the end as well. So some quick need to knows before we move on. We do encourage you to ask questions, and I will pause at some points during this webinar to look to you for your questions. And let's try and make this as interactive as possible so we can cover what you want to be covered today. And like I said, we will leave some Q&A time at the end. So by all means, do avail of the chat and the question boxes on your control panel, and there is an option for the full screen view as well. So let's move on then. So let's start with the tools available to you for your own training and for training others. So these accessible via our info site. We have webinars, which you all know, of course, as you're in one right now. And the webinar schedule, our individual webinar links, may be distributed throughout your organization. In fact, we positively encourage you to do this. FAQs, frequently asked questions, are not searchable yet, but will be in a new training and support platform that we're building. So more on this in a minute. And I will be referring to our Medline in Embase white paper later on in the webinar, and we have other white papers also available on our info site for you to download. The newsletters are sent quarterly with tips and tricks, customer interviews, and really a roundup of all that is new for your information. If you've not signed up already, you can on the info site. And registered users of Embase automatically get the newsletter. So that's when you register on the Embase product itself. And finally, we have a selection of short videos for the new users. Now, in order to increase the accessibility and the interaction with the materials that we have, we are looking into building a new site for training and support. Now this will cover materials for Embase. There will be a page for Embase, but also other Elsevier products that you may or may not be using. You will be notified before this goes live. So of course we want to include as many of you as possible and let you know how you can get to that site. We will make links available from the info site. Like I said, we want to make sure that that at every possibility and whenever you need information, you can access that information also from the product site. So we will be looking to you for feedback on that as well. Now, I would like to take a little pause at this point and ask you if you have any comments or questions on these tools. So you can, as I said, use the chat or the question box we mentioned earlier, and it would be great if you could let me know if there are other tools that you would like to see, again, for your own training and learning needs or for those of your users. So let's just take a moment and just, if you want to submit some questions, then I can take those just now. And of course, if you don't have any questions at the moment, that's also fine, and we can move on to the next section. Okay, so let me see, I'm getting some questions coming in. That is great. So no questions so far, that's fine. Will you be going over mesh terms? Yes, I certainly can. So when we come on to talking about the content and the indexing, then I will certainly mention the mesh terms. And at that point, if I don't cover exactly what you wanted to know, then by all means let me know, and we can go into that in more detail. Now, the white paper that I refer to, the Medline in Embase, does go into this in some detail. And if perhaps you were looking for something that's a little bit more accessible for your users, then I would love to hear that as well, and we can look into the possibilities of producing something there. Okay, so no questions on the tools. Okay, if you think of anything afterwards, by all means let me know. This is an opportunity to find out from you what it is that you need. So a webinar is a great opportunity, of course, for us to catch up, but when you get back to your desks and when you need to use Embase on whatever regular basis that you use it, then it would be great, of course, if you have the tools that help you to do that. So let's move on for now. So, demonstrating value. So, to help you and your users visualize the content in Embase, you can use this diagram. And this shows the Embase content combined with Medline, going back to 1960, and with Embase Classic going back to 1947. Embase articles in press and in process and conference abstracts ensure users have the opportunity to review the most recent research as soon as possible. And we're looking into adding Medline article in press and in process this year to add to that comprehensiveness. So if we take a look at the overlap in more detail, so Embase.com combines Embase and Medline. Now, before I do that, I did want to point out that you can look up the coverage of Embase on our info site as well. There are journal lists there and also conference lists, so you can see which conferences are covered. Now, let's have a look at the content overlap. So on the left-hand side, we see Embase, about 5.5 million records, about 2,000 journals. We see Medline on the right-hand side, about 9,002,500 journals. Now, this is the Medline unique that we add to Embase. The section you see in the middle, the overlapping section, is indeed the Embase and Medline overlapping journals and titles. And these are the journals and titles that we then take from Embase. So we take the complete Embase collection and then we look to Medline to complement the Embase collection and add those unique titles. It is possible to search for only the Embase unique. So when demonstrating value to users, we do know that they're interested, well, why? If I'm searching in PubMed, for example, why would I need to search in something else? Now, content is something that's quite visible. There are indexing differences as well, of course, but there is unique content in Embase, and you could show this to your users, for example, by applying this to a search strategy. So, for example, you could take a disease or a drug and a disease and then search Embase/limit, not Medline/limit, and what this does then is it allows you to see only the Embase unique records. So these are the records that are only in there from Embase, not overlapping Medline and Embase, and not unique Medline. And then they can review the value of that content, of course, but they can also review maybe the regional differences that are there as well. So that might be something of interest. So like I said, content and the reasons for searching in Embase this can be a very visible and effective way of doing that. So taking that content, how else is Embase delivering value? So this is what we would like to demonstrate to users and what we'd like to help you to demonstrate today. So by searching in Embase, they are not missing any biomedical literature, which you see here on the top. So as I said, we have the conference proceedings, we have the scientific journals coming from Embase and Medline, and we have the impress. So the most recent, the most up-to-date version of the of a particular article is added to Embase as soon as it is available, and that's in the impress or in the in process. So the best results are achieved through using the controlled vocabulary. So this comes via our thesaurus entry, as these are also used to index the full text. And together with the Embase tools and the search capabilities, they help you and all our users to better pinpoint precise information. So imagine not having to read through piles of articles. So the full text, the full text, of course, being able to search the index terms in that full text will often pull up very valuable information. So rather than you reading just the abstract and wondering if indeed this is something that you need to look at in more detail, that indexing can often help you to pinpoint that at an earlier stage. Okay. Now I know that there's a couple of more questions that came in, and I'm just going to move on till the end of the case study, and then what I'll do is I'll come back and answer some more questions if that's okay. So I'd like to take you through a case study. So often coming up with a question can be a good way of showing users how and why it's they can best interact with Embase. So here we've taken an example of a clinician working on a systematic review for publication. Now this, of course, seems like a very academic example, but we could substitute this for somebody, of course, who needs to look for all the side effects of a particular drug, for example, or indeed someone in corporate that is looking to publish as well. So the need here is to adhere to certain guidelines to ensure that our clinician has conducted a thorough search of the literature. So we know, of course, in the pharma environment that there are also certain guidelines around drug safety and pharmacovigilance to ensure that that a thorough search has also been conducted. So we can substitute this particular example with different scenarios. So the question that I'm going to look at today, are there any risks associated with the administration of antibiotics together with digoxin in a patient with congestive heart failure who has contracted pneumonia? Now, like I said, we can substitute this depending on the examples that you have, and I'm happy to help you come up with some examples as well. But let's take a look at what this looks like. So we're actually going to start with the answer in some respects. So here we have an article which does offer the information that we're interested in. In the full text, we see that there is valuable information on the pharmacokinetics of the antibiotic, which is discussed in this particular article, in combination with digoxin. And going further, we see that QT interval prolongation is discussed. So valuable information that we would like to be aware of, or that we need to be aware of, before we made any decisions or drew any conclusions with regards to this particular question. So an example of an article that we would like to find. So when we're thinking about then searching, this is starting looking at Embase. So one of the major steps, of course, is to figure out how to do a comprehensive literature search. So here we're looking at Embase, and here even in the quick search form, there is a certain amount of guidance even for a less than experienced searcher. So here they're starting, you can see here we've started to type in Lanoxin, which is a trade name for digoxin, another trade name for digoxin. And you can see that, that even on the quick search, you are being prompted and guided as you type it in. So here you can see that Lanoxin, it says use digoxin, so then we know that this is a synonym of digoxin. The control term in this case is digoxin. Now, even without explaining too much about the control vocabulary, we can see that this is a term that appears to be searchable in Embase. So we can select it, and we could start to run our search. If we look at other options, so we have non-thesaurus assisted searching. I'm just using Google and Scopus here, both of which offer value to the customers, but I'd like to compare them in this case when we are doing comprehensive biomedical literature searching and see what the particular value could be here. So this is thinking about users who may not have the experience indeed to think of the best terms to use. And here we also include PubMed, of course, and see what difference that could make by searching for digoxin, an antibacterial agent. So here we have some results, and we've got two very different sets of results. So we have the Embase results with quite a large number of results, and we have, in this case, we're looking at the Scopus results, which are 22 in this case. So the results are so different, but of course you could ask, does that really matter? And the reason that we see such a big difference in the results here is that with Embase, we also searched the synonyms for antibacterial agent, and we also searched the narrower terms. Now, antibacterial agent, I should say, of course, as we know, is a huge family of drugs. And what we've done here is we searched exploded, so we included all of the specific terms for antibacterial agent and all of the synonyms. So we didn't even have to think about what those synonyms were. They were automatically mapped to our search. Now, a non-thesaurus search is a very different search. So there was no simultaneous searching of the synonyms or narrower terms, only the bacterial agent is searched. And this does not always find the vital information. So here we found our article is found in the Embase results, but it was not indeed found in our non-thesaurus assisted search. So in this case, it did make a difference. Now, if we have a look at this compared to PubMed, so PubMed has a thesaurus, and PubMed uses the mesh thesaurus and the mesh terms, of course, and we had a question on this earlier. Now, when Medline is added to Embase, then we do map those mesh terms to entry, so you can actually search with mesh terms, and they are included in the overall entry thesaurus. What we do in Embase, of course, is we index with the entry thesaurus, and in PubMed, we're searching PubMed here, and specifically Medline, they index with the mesh thesaurus, which is different. It is a smaller thesaurus, and the entry thesaurus does index more drugs and also more deeply. So we do see a difference here in the results. So two thesaurus-assisted searchings, but different results. So we know that there's unique content in Embase. Now, not only, of course, the Embase unique journal content, but conference abstracts are also in Embase, which is unique to Embase. But is there anything else? Is that why we didn't find this particular article? So again, we know that we found it in our Embase search, but we didn't find it in Medline. And that's because Medline does not index digoxin in this article. So our search was on digoxin and antibacterial agent. So that does make a difference. If the term is not found, then you do run the risk, of course, of missing valuable information. So in this case, it did make a difference. So with this case study, what we hope we demonstrate is that there is value in searching in Embase, and there is a risk of missing valuable information without doing that. Now, what we hope we also demonstrated is that it's also easy to search in Embase, and we'll be looking at that in more detail as we go through this particular webinar. But what I'd like to do is just now take a check on the questions that you have been asking to see if we've got anything else there. So we got asked, please can you send the link to the white paper? Yes, I can. I will send that directly after the webinar as I follow up with you all. And we also had, so the 5.5 million records are unique Embase records not found in Medline, correct. And the 9 million records from Medline are unique to Medline. Yes, that's true. So this was the slide that we presented some time back with the showing the overlap. And this was indeed with the 5.5 million and the 9 million. So yes, these were indeed unique Embase and unique Medline. And of course, then they are all available in embase.com and all part of your search. Okay, thank you for that question. How to find the right article from 8,000 articles to read one by one or any? Now that's a good question. In the case study, of course, you saw that the Embase results were 8,000, which is a lot. Now what I'd like to do when we go through the webinar is show you, of course, how you can start to refine that search. Now there's always a testing process. So refining your search can, of course, mean that you have to be careful that you're not actually then pulling out important information. So there's always a testing process. So editing and refining and testing the results are, of course, an important part of any search, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail when we start searching in Embase. But great question, and one I'm sure that that gives you a headache from time to time. Can we receive an attendance form for this webinar? Okay, that one I'll come back to. When searching Embase using the thesaurus, are the most recent articles retrieved? They are not retrieved in PubMed if using mesh terms. So, since they've not been indexed. Again, a great question. And our articles in press and our in-process records are indexed. Now, they are not what we call manually indexed. They are indexed with entry, because the important part here, of course, is to get the information into Embase as quickly as possible. So the entry controlled vocabulary is run over the articles in press and the in process and the conference abstracts, and an index record is created before they are added into Embase. So yes, by mapping and using entry, you are retrieving the most recent records. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. Lots of great questions. Will you compare and contrast entry with mesh terms? Not so much today. This is something, of course, that that could be a webinar all by itself. And in fact, our next webinar, we are now in March, our next webinar in April, which I'll send you the link to after this, or if you want to check the webinar schedule on the info site, is indeed about entry. So I would recommend that that you go there, or that you attend that next webinar. Okay, let's get back to our slides and start searching in Embase. So let's. This is a recommendation by Carol Lefebvre, who was working with the Cochrane UK at the time. And it's something that we like to show. It's a recommendation for using Embase, and again, just reiterating the point that that unique content is important. Now, some of the questions that I had gathered, just in case there weren't any questions coming through from the group, that we see coming through from yourself, from trainers, and from users, is around the articles in press and the in process and the fully indexed record, and why does Embase have all three? So I think we've covered that to some degree, in that articles in press and in process are the most up-to-date versions and the most what would you call it? Readily available versions of the article before they are fully published. So the article in press is before it's fully published. The in process is where we add the article with the entry vocabulary control vocabulary before it goes through the fully indexed stage. And then when it's fully indexed, we remove the in process and indeed the article in press if that version also existed. And then you see only the fully indexed record. So this is to ensure that you get the most value out of the article at any time. The conference abstracts come from the journals of the societies themselves. So they provide a summary and the abstracts via the journals, and we then extract that information and add it as conference abstract information into Embase so you can search it specifically. And is all of Medline in Embase, therefore do I not need to search both? This is always a good question, and what we can do is furnish you with the facts in that all of Medline is in Embase, and we looked at the case study where there are differences in the content obviously between Embase and Medline, but also in the indexing. And to say that you don't need to search both is something that that we very much leave to yourselves as experts in this area. Now this is all about you having confidence, and you need to be able to search embase.com and confidently say that you don't need to search Medline. Where you feel that we can add to that confidence, then we'd very much like to hear from you. Certainly in the area of drug and disease related topics, then we feel confident to say that you are getting a comprehensive search from embase.com. So let's move on a little bit. This is the white paper link, actually, and I think we were asked for this in the session. So here, this will be in the slides that you get afterwards, but I'll also make sure that I send you you can see here the link, actually, the embase.com info user files, where you can pick up other white papers as well. But this is the coverage of Medline in Embase white paper that we referred to. So the initial investigation, let's jump into embase.com for this and start to have a look around. So what you're trying to do is to show where you can start to scope out your search in Embase very easily. So this is your investigation stage. And how can you start to look for terms? How can you test terms to build up the best strategy? So we saw in our slides, for example, earlier, that you have the autocomplete on quick search, where when you start typing in, you are prompted with the entry terminology. So here we have Januvia. So we click on Januvia, and we saw there the generic term sitagliptin. And what we can do here, all years, is ticked. So are selected rather, so we can click on search, and it brings us into our search. And from here we could do a number of things. So we could start to look at the filters here on the left hand side. So I see from my disease filter, for example, that I see a number of like non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus, which is not surprising because Januvia is one of the main drugs used in the treatment of this particular disease. But I can see a certain number of what we would consider perhaps side effects here as well. So you could, for example, select your insulin resistance here, and you could filter. And we'll see that that significantly, of course, decreases the number of results that we have. Now you can see here by running my cursor over a particular search, I have a number of options. So I have, for example, copy to advanced search. I could go into the advanced search with more options for editing, or I could indeed edit in line here. So I could just click on edit, and it opens up a box where I can indeed edit that particular search. Now what we can also do is look in some, let me just get rid of that for a moment, is to look in some of the articles. I'm just going to cancel this. Now looking for different terms can be very useful, and as well as having the abstract here, you have the index terms. So if you start looking here, then you see the number of other drug terms. So maybe there's some interesting drug combination studies that you might want to look at. These drugs may be used in combination with each other, they may not be, but you'll see that the bold indicates that they're major focus, and when I run my cursor over them, I see the additional information of which subheading that they've been combined with. And here you can see drug comparison and drug therapy, so no real surprise with the drug therapy, but here we can see which drugs sitagliptin have been compared to. So that might be an idea. You can see, for example, different disease terms. I see here diarrhea, which was a side effect of taking these particular drugs. This was noted in this particular article. So you start to build up some idea of both the results that you have just ascertained, but also perhaps get some clues on which terms may be interesting to use in your particular search. Okay, let me pop back into our slides very quickly. So if we want to start building our search, so we've done some investigation, now we want to start building up the search. So what we could do is we could take a look in Emtree. So here I've opened up Emtree and I've taken a look at digoxin, and there's a number of things that I can do. So Emtree we mentioned is a huge thesaurus of over 60,000 terms, including the mesh terms, and 30,000 drug and chemical terms. You can click here to search further in an Embase search form, or indeed you can click here to see the results exploded. Emtree is updated 3 times a year, and you'll see the link here to look at what that the new terms that are added at each particular time throughout the year. And this is very important information. So not only are we adding content, the most current content, but when you're searching, the control vocabulary that you are using in Embase is also updated on a regular basis. So if you're comparing that to MESH, for example, where it's updated once a year, here when new terminology becomes available, and we of course we're always creating what we call a waiting list, then those new terms can be added in 3 times a year, which mean that they are then fully indexed and searchable when you are searching in Embase. So reviewing an Emtree term. Now in Embase not only can you see if the term is there, but there's also some other valuable information like the history, the synonyms. Now this is very important when you're thinking about your comprehensive searching. If you review the synonyms and they appear to have all the terms that you are aware of, including all the trade names, for, if you're looking for a particular drug and you want to make sure that you're searching everything, then having those trade names in there may be useful as well. Chemical codes, for example. We've also got the cash registry numbers and the Dorland's dictionary. Backposting. So Emtree terms change, such as trade names and now generic name. So how do you find all the articles, not only those indexed from the date of the new term? So this is backposting. So every time there is an Emtree update, then there is backposting as well. So this is a particular term that we're looking at, and you can see that the term was added to Emtree in 2012. Now, the term was referred to as intadanib before this. Okay, so the term changed, it was updated. So now you as a searcher want to have confidence that you are indeed finding all the records when you search for the term, not just starting from 2012. And because of the backposting, you can do that. So I've just run a search here for nintedanib, and you can see that we are getting results back to 2004. And here I filtered to 2011. And we can see if we open that record from actually 2008, I've looked at here, we can clearly see that that term has been updated to reflect the new control term in Emtree. Okay, so I want to do another search with you. So this is tracking the efficacy of saxagliptin in treating diabetes type 2 and comparing the efficacy or safety of dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors. So let's go back into Emtree again. And we're going to go to Emtree here, and we'll look for our saxagliptin. And we click on search, and we have saxagliptin here. And what we can now do is we can take this to the drug search form. So this is for users who want to go a step further. So of course we've seen how they can very easily use the quick search, for example, or indeed even the advanced search, and carry out a search. But what if they want to go a step further and they want to start looking for specific concepts for a drug? So starting in Emtree, they can test if the term is there, find out a little bit about it, select the subheading, in this case pharmacokinetics, because we're interested in efficacy, and they can create a search. Now, I like to go to Emtree even when I know the term that I'm looking for to check spelling sometimes. I don't know if you're like me, but I don't always trust my spelling and the exact term. So here I'm looking for diabetes mellitus, and I'm going to choose the non-insulin because that's what I think is type 2, and I can check it here. It is indeed type 2 diabetes mellitus. So what I can do with this one is take it to disease search. Now Emtree recognizes the disease and the drug terms, and here we have drug therapy. We click on search, and we have then number 4, number 3, combine using AND. So in a relatively short amount of steps, now I didn't have to check those in Emtree. I could have, of course, gone straight into the drug search form and selected my subheading, and I could have got those results. Now, what you can also do is you can consider some refine options. So here you see when I run my cursor over this particular search, I've got the copy to disease search. And what I can do is I could see the difference in selecting major focus here. So exploded search will throw my search out. So if I was to look for the dipeptidyl peptidase 4 inhibitors, which I'll do in a moment, then of course I get a very broad search across that whole group of drugs. And here, by selecting major focus, we should have a narrowing effect. And of course you do see that. Now there's a substantial number of these drugs in the original selection that we had, 34,000. We see that quite a number of them are of major focus. And of course, if we then combined this with our saxagliptin, we have 72 results. Now you would need to, of course, run some checks over that. Major focus is something to be considered when you want to narrow the set of results. And narrow focus is used, or sorry, major focus is used by our indexers. So when we saw here, for example, if we look in the index terms, we saw the bold earlier. So our indexers are indicating where the terms are the major focus in the article, and we can then use that to narrow our results. So that will give us some options, of course, for narrowing. We also looked at the filters earlier, and some other ideas for narrowing your results is, let's have a look at our dipeptidyl, and we can have a look at a couple of other things. So if we go here and let's type in our let's see what we get when we do this. Okay, so dipeptidyl peptidase, and we see here our peptidase 4 inhibitor all the way down here. So let's choose this one. And what we could do is we can just simply click on these results, and we then automatically include all of those narrower terms. Now, what we could do here is copy this to the drug search. Okay, so maybe we say actually we do now want to narrow this down and look at some drug subheadings, or indeed we could look at some age groups perhaps. So why don't we look at and see if there's anything on child, for example, at 1 to 12 years. And we see 19 results. So when we saw those 8,000 results earlier, there are ways and means, and certainly when you're building a search strategy, you would of course look for perhaps patient information. You may look for maybe certain procedures, you may look for certain environments, or indeed you may look for the major focus or for the drug or the disease subheadings, and these will add more focus to your results. And they are all selectable on the drug and disease search form, but indeed also on the advanced search form. So the difference here is you don't see the disease and drug subheadings. You do, however, see the field limits. So here, for example, your users could add abstract and title to their searches. So let me take you back to the slides very quickly. And what I wanted to do here is to show you the slides that we will be sending you have indeed tips for building and combining searches, which we've gone through. And we do have information on truncation operators, as in and, are, not, next, near, which you can find in our help files, such as here, where you can see more explanation on the use of near and next. And also we offer guidance on the refining your search, so there are some tips here for doing that as well. That we've looked at with regards to the field limits and the drug and disease subheadings, and of course the editing in the search itself. And we have, of course, the training videos for more guidance. Now there are some more searches here, and there are some notes which you can look at where we've outlined some guidance on running those particular searches. Of course, when your users and yourself have come up with the ideal search, then you may want to indeed save that search, which is possible in Embase, or indeed set it up as an email alert. Now, we've recently launched our new email alerting center, and we will be covering this in future webinars as well. But if you haven't had a chance to check it out, then I would advise you to do so. There's a lot of great information in there. So let me come back and see, in the time that we have some time for some questions. Does Emtree index the keywords that are sometimes given by authors in first page of articles? Now, that is a good question, and I actually, I know that there's been some conversation on adding keywords, and I have to admit I cannot exactly remember. As far as I recall, we are adding the keywords. They are part of the indexing, but I'm going to ask you to let me check that for you and send it in there. So what we'll do is we'll gather all the questions that have been asked during the session and provide answers and send them to all of you. So if you have any more questions that you haven't asked yet, just because we've run out of time doesn't mean that we won't be answering those questions. So keep typing, and we'll certainly get back to you with all of your questions. So another question: a company uses Ovid to search Embase. Do the conference abstracts in process and Medline unique records included in that database? Yes, they are. So there is content parity there. You indicated that all of Medline is in Embase, but there wasn't complete overlap in the first slide. Medline still had 9 million unique records. Yes, so those unique records are added. So sorry if that wasn't clear. So what we do is we take the complete Medline feed, But if it is already there, the article is already there from Embase, then we don't add it from Medline. So of course what we're trying to do is to minimize duplication of the records. So we do in effect add all of Medline, but we're only really taking the unique Medline records. So those unique Medline records that come in have the Medline indexing, and that's important to note as well. So the majority of content that you're searching in Embase uses the indexing that we looked at today, the M-tree control vocabulary, and those unique Medline records then keep their Medline indexing. We don't run Embase M-tree indexing over that unique Medline content. One more question. Could you show me an example searching only material from Embase and excluding Medline? We have actually run out of time, but to the person who asked that question, I am more than happy to send you an example, or indeed talk to you on the phone about the example. But what I'll do is I'll send you a complete search strategy with including the strategy then for looking for some terms rather only in Embase, and then I'll show you a series of screenshots, and then we can always follow up on the phone afterwards if you wish. So we have come to the end. We have had our 45 minutes, some great questions, lots of questions, really appreciate that. Our next webinar will be taking place on it's the third Wednesday of every month. So please do tune in for that. I will be sending you details of the webinar schedule, and as I said, the next webinar will be focusing on M-tree and the updates and where we're looking for extending and optimizing the M-tree coverage. So I think some interesting areas to look at there. Some of the other things we'll be covering this year are also working on search, more on search strategies, and also on drug safety. So quite a lot of things coming up throughout the year. So do check out our webinar schedule. And it only leaves me to say thank you very much for your time today. And I look forward to meeting you in future Embase webinars. If you haven't had time to ask your questions, then please do send them along to me. You'll get some emails coming through from us to follow up with slides and recordings. And if you've got any further questions, don't hesitate to ask. There will also be a survey. I am going to stop now. There will be a survey, and we would really appreciate if you have time to fill that out right after this webinar. Thank you so much for your time, and see you the next time.